Shana Tova. We have a chance to study a little bit together, so there's a handout for those here in the sanctuary. This is the time to take it out. It's entitled Planting New Seeds of Hope. Look at that. For our friends online, they already have it on the screen. It's the very top of the page. I quoted the words from the traditional machzor that I made reference to on Wednesday night when we began on Erev Rosh Hashanah. Let the year end and its curses, let the year begin and its blessings. I don't know about you. For me, the state of our world is so distressing, so upsetting, so filled with a sense of cursedness, I guess you would say, that I've tried to, as much as I can, I've tried to sort of will myself to a place of optimism and hope as we move into the season of the new year, because to hold on to the sense of upset from last year just seems so counterproductive. So what I've done here is gone in search of an image that I hope will resonate with you. Maybe it's going to, maybe it's not. But if you, like me, are looking for new sources and well springs of hope, then I hope that this conversation today will add a new image to your sort of Jewish reflective repertoire as we try to find these new sources of strength as we enter into the year. So if you look at text number 1, this is a text which comes from the Mishnah, which is the first strand of the Talmud. The Mishnah was written, it was final redaction in the land of Israel around the year 250. So the rabbis of the Mishnah, this is the opening passage of Tractate Rosh Hashanah, so certainly appropriate for today. They say as follows, and for those who don't consider themselves experts on the Jewish calendar, this might be a little bit shocking and upsetting, so please brace yourselves. According to the rabbis, it's not one day in the year that serves as Rosh Hashanah, but actually 4 of them, according to the Jewish tradition. There are 4 days on our calendar that are known as Rosh Hashanah or New Year's days. Each one, according to the rabbis, serving a different purpose. The first of Nisan, which the month of Nisan always falls in the spring. It's the month in which Passover takes place. The first of Nisan is the Rosh Hashanah, the new year for kings, keeping track, it's like the fiscal year of like presidential terms, right? The fiscal year for our presidency is January 20th. In ancient Israel, it was 1 Nisan, okay? So first of Nisan is the new year for kings, and by the way, this is the date that the year of a king's rule is counted, and the first of Nisan is also the Rosh Hashanah, the first of the year with regard to the order of the counting of the holidays. In case you find yourselves kept up at night, scratching your head, which is the first holiday of the Jewish calendar year, and the second and the third? You might think that Rosh Hashanah is the first holiday of the year. That is technically incorrect. According to the rabbis, Passover is the first Jewish holiday of the calendar year, and then after Passover, the holiday of Shavuot, which comes 7 weeks later, and then Sukkot. That's the rhythm of the pilgrimage festivals. Okay, so all of that is 1 Nisan, which is the first of these 4 New Year's days. They continue. The first of Elul. Now, Elul on the Jewish calendar is the month immediately preceding Rosh Hashanah, the month before Tishrei. So on the first of Elul is the new year for animal tithes. So again, if you were... show of hands, who is concerned about the sacrifice of animals today? We don't do sacrifices anymore. Please, nobody go home and sacrifice an animal in their backyard after today. We stopped doing that 2,000 years ago. But when this text was written, the rabbis were deeply concerned about writing down and recording the prior system of the animal sacrifices and keeping track of the fiscal year. You have to know from this date to this date is going to constitute a year, so that X percentage of the animals that you had during that time can be properly sacrificed. That's one Elul. Now the most familiar one Tishrei, the new year for the counting of years. And finally, the first of the month of Shvat. This occurs, of course, in the winter around January. The first of the month of Shvat is the new year for the trees. The fruit of a tree that was formed prior to first Shvat belongs to the previous fiscal year when it comes to determining about fruit offerings. This ruling is in accordance with the statement of the house of Shammai. Of course, one of the things we know from this period is that Shammai and his students were intellectually at war with Hillel and his students. They agreed on nothing. So the house of Hillel comes along and says, Shammai and his friends don't have any clue what they're talking about. The new year of the trees is not on 1 Shvat, but on 15 Shvat. And it turns out that Jewish law follows Hillel instead of Shammai. And so today, the new year of the trees, what's the name of that holiday? Tu B'Shvat. So that name comes from the Hebrew acronym for the number 15. Two is not T-W-O, two is Tet Vav, which is the number 15 of Shvat. So why in the world have I gone through this exercise of reviewing with you the not one, but 4 different Rosh Hashanahs in the year? Because I want to argue this morning that the imagery associated with the new year of trees, Tu B'Shvat, is deeply connected to the sense of hope and optimism that we might carry forward into our new year, 5785. We know that trees are first and foremost a part of the creation story which we celebrate on Rosh Hashanah. Take a look at text 2. From the ground, the Holy One caused to grow every tree that was pleasing to sight and good for food. And the biblical author goes out of their way in the creation story in the Torah to say that at the very center of the Garden of Eden, the most important objects, what are they? 2 trees, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and bad. Clearly, the biblical author was taken with this notion of tree as a very, very powerful image. And not only there, but much later in the Hebrew Bible, from the book of Proverbs, this is text number 3. The text says she is a tree of life to those who grasp her. Who or what is the biblical author referring to? Who is the she in that clause? She is a tree of life to the Torah, right? Or maybe more broadly, wisdom, absolutely, right? So we say, it's in the liturgy, we're about to sing it later on in our service, Eitz Chaim Chi, right? She, the Torah, is a tree of life to those who grasp it, and everyone who holds on to her is happy. That clearly, from biblical times, right, the notion that the Torah could be embodied in the image of a tree and of having a sense of life-giving and life-renewing power, right? That, the biblical author believed, and on some level symbolically, we believe today that the words of Torah are so powerful, so transformative, so renewing, that they are a source of life for us in our community. Okay. Text 4a. This is from a collection of Midrash from Leviticus Rabbah, edited, let's say, approximately 1,500 years ago. Rabbi Yehuda ben Rabbi Shimon said, "You shall follow the Lord your God." This is a quote from the book of Deuteronomy. How in the world, the rabbis asked, is it possible to literally follow God, right? First of all, God's invisible. Second of all, according to the rabbis, God is like all-powerful, right? Like, the blinding flash of a massive explosion. How could you possibly follow that? You would be putting yourself in danger. So the rabbis asked this question: what does it mean to follow the Lord your God? Is it possible for flesh and blood, for a person to literally follow the Holy Blessed One? The text says God's way was through the sea, and God's path was through the mighty waters. Nobody could keep up with a force of nature like that. So the Midrash begins with this possibility that it's not possible to literally follow God, and the text continues. You say you shall follow the Lord, you shall cleave to him, according to Deuteronomy. Is it possible for a human being to ascend heavenward and physically latch on to the divine presence? For the text says, the Lord your God is an all-consuming fire. And it's written, God's throne was sparks. Wouldn't it be dangerous? Wouldn't you be taking your life in your hands if you literally tried to cleave yourself to God's all-powerful, super hot, please do not touch it presence? And as if that doesn't scare you enough, the rabbis throw in the reference from the book of Daniel, right? His throne was sparks of fire, and holy moly, a river of fire flowed and emerged from before him. You do not want to go there. You will get hurt. So, you shall cleave to him. How do you do that? So the rabbis say, rather, from the beginning of the creation of the world, the Holy One engaged in only one thing first. And what was it? It was planting. This all-powerful force and presence in the world that could do anything decided that as a first act of creation, that God would plant a tree, right? This is like a commercial right out of the Jewish National Fund inviting us to plant trees in Israel. So it is written, the Lord God planted a garden in Eden. You too, when you enter the land, engage in the act of planting first. That is what it is written, when you come into the land, and you shall plant. And a parallel point is made in this very famous Midrash 4b. Shimon Bar Yochai taught that if you are holding a sapling in your hand, if you are about to plant a tree, now what are the chances, right? In the very moment that you're about to plant a tree, that like the alert comes across on your phone, like, guess what, Jewish people? The Messiah has decided to come at this very moment? I don't know. It's possible, right? According to the rabbis, if you find yourself in that very particular situation, please do not drop everything and go and meet the Messiah. That would be foolhardy. It's more important, it's really a radical statement, more important to plant the tree first and meet the Messiah second. Something about the tree, the act of planting and nurturing, sustaining, for those of us that are inclined to hug a tree, to meditate on the tree, there is something about the tree that demands our attention. Text number 5. This is from early 20th century Israeli poet Shin Shalom. On the 15th of the month of Shvat, when the spring comes, such a beautiful image, an angel descends with the ledger in hand. Now remember, right, the background here is the first text that we looked at, right? 15 Shvat is the fiscal year for trees. And according to the law of ancient Israel, you have to know how many trees, how much fruit you're producing in any given year so that you sacrifice and offer up the right amount. So according to Shin Shalom, on the 15th of Shvat, when the springtime comes, an angel descends from heaven with a counting ledger in their hand and counts each bud, each twig, and each tree, and all of your garden variety flowers in one town to the next, one village to the next. This angel makes their winged way, searching the valleys, inspecting the hills, flying over the desert, and returns to heaven when the ledger will be full of trees and blossoms and shrubs. And in that moment when the desert is turned into a meadow and all of our land is a watered garden, then the Messiah will appear. I love the contemporary Israeli reference to the desert blooming into a meadow. It resonates with the Zionist narrative of building up the land, but also in terms of our experience of the holidays, right? This is the time of year when we imagine that God and the angels have their ledgers out taking account of us and all of our deeds, and similarly, there is an accounting being made of the trees. And I love that there is this partnership, between us and our choices and the trees and what they produce. Continue with text 6 from my colleague, Dr. Erica Brown, noted significant voice in the Jewish world today. She teaches that each part of the tree is a metaphor for human development: the roots, the trunk, the leaves, the fruit, the shade. We are to aspire to be all of these things. And we are to be them most when life is at its lowest. That is a moment that might be now in this season. When life is at this lowest, this is the time when we are to strive to be like the tree. And why is that? Because the prophet Jeremiah in exile reminds us to build houses and to marry off children and to plant. This is advice that the prophet gives specifically in the shadow of the destruction of the first temple, historically in the period around 586 BCE. Precisely in those dark times, the investment that the Jewish people are commanded to make is to plan for their future with hope. Build houses, marry off your kids, plant some trees. Get ready for a more hopeful future. That investment invites us to nurture something that takes time to grow but provides rich dividends. In text number 7 from 19th century Germany, Samson Raphael Hirsch, he says, long winter months are still ahead, but the 15th of the month of Shvat conveys to Jewish minds and hearts the first greeting of a coming spring. In the core and the arterial network of trees, silently and softly, hidden from surface or casual view, the new sap flows, announcing that coming. The unthinking observer considers the day on which the leaves of the blossoms finally give way to the emerging, fully ripened fruit as the birthday of the fruit. But that would be a mistake, he says, right? The casual observer who just comes along and says that the trees are doing their thing when the fruit has popped up, that's an incorrect reading of the magnificence of the tree, right? Because all of this stuff was happening underneath the surface, hidden from casual human view. The thinking person inquires about the time of budding and researches the process which leads to the buds first stirring inside the tree. The 15th of Shvat is the new year of the trees, the birthday of the blossoms, even in the middle of the winter. Under this torn, dark, cold bark, new, fresh life pulsates. Behold the trees on the day of their birthday. They celebrate today their silent inner rebirth in defiance of nature's onslaughts. Their inner core remained alive and fresh, even as their outside was deadened and decayed. They will always weather the storm. Their foundation was in a place where weather and storms do not reach. The metaphor at this point is obvious. No matter how much dead and decay and suffering we might experience on the outside, inside, we, the Jewish people, continue to pulsate with life. Channeling the biblical author in the book of Job, there is hope for a tree. If it is cut down, it will renew itself. Its shoots will not cease. If its roots are old in the earth and its stump dies in the ground, at the scent of water it will bud and produce branches like a sapling. It's not a question according to the biblical author. It is a scientific fact. Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people live and survive. We are like the tree. They can try to cut us down, but we are just going to keep on going. Shana Tova.